At this time, I'd like to recognize a good friend and a colleague from the great state of Texas who understands these issues just as well as anyone, who has thousands of dreamers in his community, and who I am so grateful to for being here tonight. Mr. Speaker, at this point, I recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Castro.
Thank you, Congressman O'Rourke, and thank you for all of your work on behalf of the Dreamers, these young students who were brought to the United States and through no fault of their own, and have grown up here, many of them knowing no other life except an American life. President Obama, his term, was so good to issue an executive action known as DACA to give these folks who were in a legal limbo a chance to participate in American society. And so many of them have gone on and are doing great things. DACA allows them to work and to go to school, and most of all, to not have to live in fear, not have to live in fear of deportation. As you mentioned, many of these folks are people who were brought here at the age of 3 or 5 or 9, had no choice about coming. Some of them didn't even realize that they were not American citizens until they had to apply to college or try to get a driver's license or in some other way interact with the government. You know, there's been a lot of rhetoric over the past few years about immigrants. They've been called rapists and murderers and criminals. There's so much of that kind of rhetoric that is used when people talk about the border, for example, and even the people that live in our border cities, whether it's El Paso or San Diego or McAllen, Texas. My wife is from the Rio Grande Valley, where you have a high concentration of dreamers, for example. But in all of that, sometimes in all of that rhetoric and ugliness, there is a profound misunderstanding about who these people are. And so thank you for helping to highlight their stories and really for the country put a human face to these folks who are good people. And I'll tell you, because I know other members have stories of dreamers in their districts, just a quick story about somebody from San Antonio, a young man named Eric Balderas. His story was in the news in the last few years. Eric was a valedictorian in 2009 of Highlands High School. He was number 1 in his class at Highlands High School, and he was on the academic decathlon team, student council, and even played varsity soccer. He also received a full scholarship to Harvard University. And while returning to Harvard in 2010 to complete summer research in molecular biology, Eric was detained at the San Antonio International Airport for traveling without acceptable identification. After efforts from Senator Durbin and the Harvard University president, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services was able to grant him deferred action status. And Eric's story so far has had a happy ending. He graduated from Harvard in 2013. There have been other folks who've achieved just as much, who are productive members of our country and our society, but oftentimes they're maligned and they're often misunderstood. And right now, we are at a critical moment in our country's history. There is a question hanging over the nation about how we will treat these dreamers, these young students, these young people, again, who find themselves in a legal limbo, who are as American as we are, who have only known America as their homeland. There's a big question about what will happen with them. The president-elect has talked about getting rid of DACA early on, perhaps in the first day in office. And so, as I'm sure you found, there's a lot of anxiety from these young people and also their families about what's going to happen to them. They've played by the rules. They're being productive. They're working hard. They're going to school. They're paying their taxes. They're living as Americans. And this will be a real test for the Congress, for the president-elect, who will, on January 20th, be the new president, and really for the nation, about what kind of nation we are. This really tugs at our conscience. And, you know, when we think about some of the, you know, some people call them criminals. They say that they broke the law. And I think when I hear that, as an attorney, I think about the different legal standards that we apply in criminal cases. For example, there's something known as mens rea, state of mind. Often when you're charged with a crime, a jury or a judge asks, did you intend to do what you did? Did you know what you were doing? Even in our civil cases, when we think about the negligence standard, and there's still a question about whether somebody was indifferent to what they were doing. Well, in this case, these young people had no idea what was going on. They had no participation in even coming to the United States, but they find themselves here as Americans. And I hope that our nation and this Congress and the next president will be big enough, will be gracious enough, and will respect their humanity and do the right thing and make sure that they're protected under the law. And as you know, we discussed, first of all, thank you for holding your town hall, which may have been the first one in this season after the election. We're going to have one in San Antonio on December 11th, which is a Sunday, with State Representative Diego Bernal, who really helped organize it and spearhead it, Congressman Lloyd Doggett, who also represents part of San Antonio, State Senator Jose Menendez, and there are also other members who I know are going to hold similar town halls in their cities, and I'll read off just a few of them because I think it's important to acknowledge that work. Pete Aguilar in San Bernardino, California, Tony Cardenas in L.A., Ruben Gallego in Phoenix, Raul Grijalva over in Tucson, Arizona, Michelle Lujan Grisham in New Mexico, and Raul Reese, who has a district in Southern California. I know that there are others that are being scheduled, but all of this work is so important because when we talk about DACA, we're not talking about a piece of legislation that's going to take months to come through the House of Representatives and the Senate. This is something, a decision that the president the new president on January 20th can make a decision to do away with it completely and to subject these kids to deportation, often to a country that they have never known, that they have no recollection of being part of or growing up in. And this really is a moral question, as you mentioned, for the country that pulls at our conscience. Thank you for all your work.
I can't thank the gentleman from Texas enough for taking the time to be here, for his leadership on this issue, not just after this election and not just since he's been in the House of Representatives, but really his whole life has been exemplary in his advocacy for the most vulnerable amongst us and in sharing the truth about the story of these young people who've come to our country.